Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the full moon circle for June 2015. Did I just say 2015? I totally meant 2025. We are actually going to spend a little bit of time in this moon circle and go back in time. So maybe that's why I was thinking of 2015. It's 2025, it's June 10th. And this is for the full moon in Sagittarius. So I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about what's going on in the skies right now with this moon, but I'm going to take a moment here and just review the lunar cycle so that if we've got any newcomers, you'll have that lunar cycle review. And also, I find it always good to review. We are. We're in a new cycle of the moon. The moon goes through these cycles every 28-ish days. And I find that following these cycles and working with these cycles to be a place of consistent learning for myself, for my life, for what I want, for what I want to create. And I actually like to call the lunar cycle the creation cycle. And I use it regularly throughout my life as a template for almost anything. And I'm really excited about this right now in particular because I've been working on a presentation that I'll be doing later this year, working with the lunar cycles and essential oils to go with those lunar cycles and the different phases of the moon. So I've been thinking a lot more than normal about the creation cycle and how to use it. And so let me just start from the beginning. So a couple weeks ago, we had a new moon, and when the moon is new, we can't see anything. It is like it represents the state of the unconscious. And throughout the lunar, I didn't really plan this, and it's going to be hard to point to these, but you can actually see. Oh my gosh, I can't do this backwards. Anyways, in this area over here, you can see actually the lunar cycle. So if you can imagine the oh my gosh, the blank, I would not have been a good weather person. Um, the blank circle is the new moon. So when there is no light shining on the moon. And that is when the moon would be in the same sign that the sun is in. So those of you that know a little bit more about astrology and how the planets move through the different signs, when the moon is in the same sign as the sun, it doesn't have the light of they're in the same place. So the light of the sun isn't reflected onto the moon that we can see from the earth. So there is no light there. And then through that month, through the next couple of weeks, the 2 weeks or so until the full moon, that light gains. So we've got a crescent moon, and then we've got a half moon, and then we've got what's called a gibbous moon, and now we've got a full moon. And in the cycle of creation or the creation cycle, you think of the new moon as the planting of seeds, the setting of intentions, the idea before it comes into material reality. So, like I said, anything that we create in this world goes through these cycles. Now, our culture tends to spend a lot of time in that initial spark of the idea as well as that growing light to that place of the full moon where it's like, oh, I am in material creation. That idea that I had. I mean, if you think of anything that you've ever thought about and then created, like literally anything, it can be, what are we going to have for dinner? I know that you all go through this cycle. What are we going to have for dinner? You don't know what you're going to have for dinner. That's that new moon time. That's the unknown. We don't know what we're going to have for dinner. And then through varying different ways, somebody's like, oh, well, we've got this chicken in the fridge. Maybe we could do something with that chicken. Oh, and we've got this, or I picked this up from the store, or oh, I'm really craving tacos. Let's get takeout. Like whatever it is, it's like then it goes in a direction. And that's the time of the waxing moon when it's growing. And then you have a meal. It has come into material reality. The things that you've cooked are now fully cooked. You're ready to eat. That's that full moon time. So, right now in the lunar cycle, we are in that full moon time. But that's not all. We have this whole other half of the cycle, and that disseminating half of the cycle after that full moon where the light gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. This is the part of that cycle of creation that our culture tends to like just gloss over because we want to get back to the growing again. We want linear process when everything goes through these cyclical processes. So taking time to really honor that time of the waning moon can be really powerful because that's when we get to, I mean, in the time of a meal, that's like the time of digestion. That's the time of, oh, wow, that meal was really good. I really appreciate that meal. Like I have some gratitude for that. I just created those really nice memories with my loved one. I'm nourishing my body. Also, rest. You hear about the two different types of the nervous system. We've got the fight or flight, and then we've got rest and digest. So, rest and digest relates to the waning cycle of the moon. So, back to what's going on right now with the moon, we're in that full moon time, and we're getting ready to dip into that second half. So, this is a pivotal point in the lunar cycle. I like to call the new moon and the full moon punctuation. It's like a punctuation mark in time, whether it's a comma or a period. It's a moment where the moon is doing something that it's not doing those other times. Those other times it's in this sort of state of movement, but for a day or so, it's staying still in that one space. And it calls for us to pause. That's what I see the new moon and the full moon as being times for, times to just pause. So the new moon is the time to be like, what is it that I want? And the full moon is the time to be like, oh, what have I created? What am I learning? What can I celebrate? So the full moon is a time of celebration. So that's the framework for the lunar cycles. Okay, right now, the moon is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius I'm married to a double Sag, so I'm like very in tune with Sagittarian energy. Sagittarius for me is like taking the long view, is like having the big dreams, is wanting to go on the adventures, wanting to travel, wanting to get to the meat of understanding why are we here, these big questions in life, like asking those questions and really investigating what that means for us here today. Now, one thing I just realized, and those of you that have been with me before, or if you know about astrology, you know that 6 months ago, there was a new moon in Sagittarius. So this moon, in some ways, though it is a culmination of what's happened since the new moon in this cycle, in this lunation, which was a couple weeks ago, it also is a time of the culmination of what we initiated 6 months ago. And 6 months ago was around the end of the year. And probably you were thinking about what you wanted for this year. And now we're coming next week, we've got the summer solstice, which is also a time that I liked. It's like the full moon of the year. And it's a time where I really like to also pause and be like, what have I accomplished this year? Sort of do a mid-year review. The moon being in Sagittarius in the month of June also calls for us to have this mid-year review. So I'm going to encourage you to really think back to what you initiated, what was starting, what was sort of bubbling up from maybe your unconscious, your dreams, the things that have yet to manifest for you 6 months ago that maybe have come into some sort of fullness of fruition, some culmination. Now, the other thing about working with the moon and understanding the creation cycle is that it keeps going. So you don't have to have it all done yet. But we want to take time now to acknowledge what we've completed so far. And that is, to me, one of the powers of the full moon. So, sidebar of what's going on in the astrology, all outside of the moon in the sky right now is Jupiter has just changed signs. It has moved from a sign that it really has a hard time in. And if I'm remembering this correctly, it came out of Aries and is now in Cancer. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which means it went from now also Jupiter is about expansion, which is really relates to the energy of Sagittarius as well. This idea of expanding. How do you want to expand in your life? So Jupiter was sort of like not in a good place. And as of, I think that it was yesterday, it has moved into a great place. So that is a great boon for this moon and a great opportunity to work with this moon right now. So that is my lecture for this moon circle. What I want to do now is to invite you to reconnect to the wise parts within you. And maybe that means closing your eyes or getting comfortable. We're going to do a little exercise so that we can access some of the wisdom from the moon from this time. And so, if you can get more comfortable where you're at, please do that. Grab a pillow, settle into your body, and like I said, feel free to close your eyes with me. And we'll begin by tuning in to the breath and the movement of the breath in the body. And I invite you to just start to notice, in particular, the way that your chest and your lungs expand when you breathe in. And then just allow the exhale to flow out. And again, breathing in and feeling that expansion. And then exhaling. And just let your breath move in and out, back and forth. And then start with a number, let's say 4. And that's all good, Alex. Alice, I got your message. You get as relaxed as you want to. Um, so let's start with the number 4. And so breathe in through the count of 4. And Alice, if you'd like to keep your eyes open, that's totally fine too. And then breathe out to the count of 4. And then when you breathe in again, go to the count of 5. And maybe exhale to the count of 5. And then keep increasing that number until you're at a place that just feels pretty comfortable for you. We want to expand the breath. So breathing into a count of 6 and breathing out to a count of 6. And then you can keep increasing that number as much as you want, or find a number that feels good and stay there. Counting on the in breath and counting on the out breath. And what I want you to notice is, especially on your inhalation, notice how it feels to expand in your body, in space, how it feels to take up space. And then we're going to let the counting go, but staying with the movement of the breath. And I invite you to go back in time to last December and just think about what was going on in your life 6 months ago around the new moon in Sagittarius. What were you dreaming of on the distant horizons? What were you hoping this year would bring for you? Maybe you had some New Year's resolutions or some goals in mind. And then fast forward to the present. And in this moment with this moon, with the light of this year and what you've learned, what have you learned about those goals, those dreams? Did they fall away or shift or come into some sort of completion, or at least a phase of completion? What can you celebrate, even if it's small at this point? And last, is there anything that isn't working that maybe you've tried different ways, or it just doesn't fit anymore? Know that in this moment, with all that you've learned, it's okay to let it go. And just for fun, let's imagine 6 months from now and the shedding that you can do between now and December of letting go of even more, or refining or editing these different parts of your life. What might that look like? And slowly coming back to the space in this room, I invite you to write down or take note of anything that came up for you in this visualization, this meditation. Maybe some insight that you can take with you through the rest of this year with what you're learning right now with this full moon in Sagittarius. And as always, if you want to create a ritual of letting go. I always recommend writing down what you're ready to release on a piece of paper in any form you like. It can be long, it can be short, it can be one word. It's all your choice. And then releasing it physically by burning it safely, of course, burying it, tearing it up into tiny little pieces and putting it into the trash. If it feels good to you to create a physical manifestation of what you're ready to just let go of, this is a great time to do that. So, for those of you that are here in the circle with me, please remain in the meeting. And I'm going to say goodbye to all of you that are catching this in the recording. Of course, I would love to hear about your experiences. Feel free to share. And thank you so much for being here with me in this moon circle.